Page 88. וכן שתי גזוז תראות. So this is referring to the Mishnah. We have two balconies, one above the other, and you have the partition, the mechitza, is erected for the upper balcony, but is not erected for the lower one. So it is partitioned for residents of both balcony to draw water to the upper one unless they establish a joiner roof between them. So the Gemara elaborates and said, "Amaravuna marav lo shanu ela besmucha, aval b'mufleget elyona muteret." So he said that it's all only apply when one balcony is near, they close to each other. But if each balcony is separated by 4 handbreadth from each other, which means that they are in distance by halacha, so therefore it's a different story. So the residents of each balcony can use the other only by means of the air. The resident of the upper are permitted to draw water, while the resident of the lower are permitted from one are prohibited from doing it. So the key point here is we have a concept that it's called zrikat avir, which means throwing, and we explained, if you remember yesterday and day before yesterday, the difference between throwing up lagova and throwing larochav, which means it's a two different concept how a person throwing to each other. So if you are in a situation that you must throw an item, which means you need to use the airspace to throw, so it's in halacha it's called ein shimush gamur. It's not a full used by halacha, only the concept of arba'at fachim, 4 handbreadth. So now we go on and bringing another statement that has an application to our Mishnah. Amar Rav Chia Rav Yosef Amar Rabbi Yoshaya, יש גזל בשבת וחורבה מחזיר לבעלים. Here is a beautiful Rashi. The Rashi tells us there is two concepts here. There is one concept, the whole idea of stealing something from someone else. And we're living in a society that people taking advantage of others in a very easy way, but according to Choshen Mishpat, according to Halacha, it's wrong as a wrong can be. So here is the situation. Imagine you live in those farmhouse. Let's say you live in the past Riva or past the area of Edgewater. What is called that area, Dave?
Harwood, Maryland.
Harwood, Maryland.
Yep.
So we have several members there. I think Waxler is from there, right? And a few others. Anyway, so you're living in those houses and you have a room property that belonged to someone else but never used. But unfortunately people taking advantage of that and using it for other purposes. Storage room and all kind of things. They're just using it. It's a sad common in society, but it is what it is. Okay? It's a matter of fact that one of my very close friend and teacher, may rest in peace, came to Beitzian. He's the fellow that brought me here to America. So he bought in Yerushalayim one time in Pisgat Ze'ev very large size property, and at that time a friend of mine and I, we both tried to work on him to sell it, to move it, because we knew the style, the society, which is he's going to be there once a year, once maybe twice a year, and we knew he leave it close his property. It's not Florida. It's not that you're closing the property and you leave and no one do anything. And at that time I remember going on his balcony and seeing from his balcony the Dead Sea and the entire east part of Yerushalayim. Unbelievable scene. So one day he didn't listen to us. So one day he came, he was all upset because the builder started building around that area, didn't ask anybody over anything, and in a way stole off all of his dreams, because he started building around in that area, and he's little by little start blocking all of his views. Before you know it, some of the builders start using a water line that come from his property. He didn't turn off the electricity, so he started getting those bills, and he doesn't know Hebrew enough, so to go to the city and to the court and start fighting over other people that used his, and he was so gullible, he felt, I'm going to buy a property in Eretz Israel, I'm going to invest my saving in Eretz Israel, so everything is going to be rosy, right? And the key point is, people sometimes taking advantage of property next to them because the owner is not there. So in our case, it's like a ruined property that somebody else using it. So here is the issue. Number one, the Gemara said that it's a gezel. It's not yours. You cannot use something that belongs to this is like stealing. Now, he said there is another concept here which said that if something happened there, let's say you left materials that belong to you and it was stolen, and vice versa, you hold responsibility the minute you start using a property that not belongs to you, regardless if you are the owner or not. But there's another concept here which is chuva machzir lebe'alim, which means that the ruin must be returned to its owner, which means you have two owners. One is the owner of the ruined property that is not living there, and one, it's you, is the fellow that using that property. So in that sense, as far as the Hilchot Eiruvin, what is happening here, you have two entities. What do you have to do in a regular situation? You have to have an Eruv. Now you didn't do Eruv, so what happened here? One person forbid the other from using it, because this ruined property eventually it's not belongs to you. So they said, the Gaon Yaakov explained here that since we said that it's gezel, it's stealing, and one cannot use the other, so then it's applied here also on the Eruv. So they said, Hagu Fakashya. You basically contradicted yourself, because Amart, yes, gezel b'Shabbat, al makanya, v'chuva machzir labalil, mal malo kanya. Pick and choose. Either you tell me that it's not yours, and therefore you are basically taking ownership, or you're stealing what is the ruined property next to you. Now, if you tell me that that's the case, so it means I'm, in that sense, the owner of that ruined property. He's not there. I'm the responsible entity. If something happened there, I'm responsible because I'm using it now. So, trace a situation. Let's say you have a ruined property next to you, and all of a sudden, while you use, damage took place. You're responsible. So if you're responsible and he is not there, why you tell me, at the other hand, that chuva machzir lebalim, that when it's come to Shabbat, it's not. You need to have the eruv, otherwise it's not effective. It's one contradicted the other, because chuva machzir lebalim, meaning that the ruin must be returned to its owner. So it must be returned to its owner. So pick and choose. Either you tell me that in halacha, prospect of Eiruvin, you are the owner or you're not. So the Gemara said, Achi kamar, yesh din gezel b'Shabbat. Keitzad chuva machzir ba'alim. There is a concept that apply also to Shabbat, which is return, that some item not belong to you, you have to return to its owner. So that apply also to Hilchot Shabbat. And it's applied to something you took from someone else that not belongs to you. During the week, you have the obligation, you're responsible to return. So it's applied, how? An example is, if you have a ruined property, so since you using a ruined property, in that sense, it's returning the lost item to its owner, which means, because you're taking and you're carrying something from some property that not belong to you, that the owner basically didn't give you a permission to use it, so you're not allowed to carry between your house to that ruined property and vice versa, because it's belong to someone else. So, and one explain the other. So it's follow what the Torah tells us in Vayikra, in the book of Leviticus chapter 5. Veheshiv et hagzela asher gazal, the person have the responsibility to return the stolen items. Now, from that we derive another point. אמר רבא ומוטבינן השמטים וכן שתי גזוזתרות לא למענו מזו והיא אמרת יש גדין בשבת אמי אסורות. Beautiful question. He says, hey, if you tell me that it's not yours and you're taking something that it's not yours and therefore it's applied to Eiruvin as well, what we said earlier, we talk about two gzuztarot, one with the top to the other. How come you allow the people on the lower parts to use it? It's the same idea as the stealing. Therefore it's the issue of using it, because the top part belongs to the people on the open, and therefore the people on the bottom use it during the week, not according to halacha. How that can be? אמר רב ששת אחר במהסכים כגון שעשו מחיצה בשותפות. Now it's a different story. What happened here? They made a partnership. Partnership is different. So I have a right in your domain. Since I have a right in your domain, we are mishtatfim, we are partners in that mechitza. Then it's a different story. Yache ke'asura tachtona nami. If that's the case, that they erected a separate partition for the lower balcony, so that the resident of the upper balcony should likewise be prohibited to use it. Why? Because the resident of the lower one are partner with the upper side. So they said, "Kevan de'asu latachtona galu galei da'atei da'ana bahadach lo nichali," which means they basically make here a statement that we don't want to use yours. Therefore, everyone can use it independently. Now, in the previous Mishnayot, we learn how you take water from a private domain on Shabbat. Now, the Mishnah dealing how you take a water on Shabbat from a private domain outside. And this Mishnah is basically based on the Rambam. I mean, the Rambam base is halacha on this Mishnah. The Rambam said in the several places, one in the Ilchot Eruv and the other one in Pirush HaMishnayot. So he said that what the Mishnah here is speaking about, Chatzer she'ipchuta me'arba amot, en shofchim mayim b'Shabbat, if you have a courtyard that it's even they use the word arba amot, 4 cubits. They said it's if you use the 4 amot, it's some say that it's specifically arba amot. Not everyone. The Rambam is like not 100% dealing with the 4 cubit total. Let's use the picture. The picture number 311, the book of Morot Daf. Everyone see it?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. 311. This is the Chatzer. The Chatzer, this is the courtyard, is less than 4 cubits by 4 cubits in the area. So they said one may not pour wastewater into the Shabbat until you have this ukar, Rashi said guma, this pit. Okay. He said that the pit has to fashion to receive the water, and the pit hole 2 se'ah in volumes from the edge below. So you see here. Now, it's a side note, we don't have the time here. There are several points. First, there is the Ritva and the Meiri, Rambam also in Pirush HaMishnah, say that it's since it's a rabbinic prohibition, and he is not throwing the water directly to Reshut HaRabim, to public domain, so his kocho, his power is forbidden, but it's a rabbinic prohibition. Now, Tosfot, the last 2 lines of Dibur Matchil Biv, again, I'll just give you a vignette. So he said, Omer ri afilu asu ken ritzpa shel avanim mivalel v'shari, that it can be a swallow, the floor. You know what happened when you leave water on the floor? You come later and it's all gone. So he said, Ela im ken asu la'uka, that you put chakika, chafira, Rabbi Yochanan says, it's a pit in that domain. That why? Because a person needs a certain water, so to this access the water coming out to a public domain. And he said, ben mibachutz ben mibefnim, regardless inside or outside. And he said, ela שמבחוץ צריך לקמור, מבפנים אין צריך לקמור. So he said, the Rambam explained in the Meiri too, they said that it's the se'atayim, it's half a cubit by half a cubit in the heights of 3/5 of a cubit. And he said that this guma, this pit is if it doesn't have the 3 handbreadth, it's not part of a public domain, because it's considering the Rashba and the Ritva and the Raavad said Chorei Reshut Rabim, like hole in the private domain. Now, what's the reason you need to cover it? So there is a different opinion. There is a opinion of Rema in Orach Chaim Shin Nun Zayin. He said you need to cover it because he said that you're not allowed to make any pit in a public domain. The Tosfot Rabbeinu Peretz said that it's because Mar'ita Ayin, that it's not looks right, that it doesn't look like this is part of a public domain. That's also the Rambam. The Tosfot Yom Tov explained that people who suspected him that he's carried the water to a public domain and he threw it inside its pit. So in short, all these different opinions, they explain the rationale of this of this issue.
Saying it only has to be covered in the Reshut HaRabim on Shabbat or all the time?
Excellent point. Here we talk about Shabbat.
Only on Shabbat, okay.
If you go by the Rema, so the Rema said exactly like you said. The Rema said in Darkei Moshe, in Orach Chaim Shinun Zayin, that it's not because of Shabbat, it's just you don't allow to do it, so apply any
Well, it
time.
makes sense. I mean, if it's for wastewater, you don't want people to be able to fall into it or something like that.
But most of the rabbis doesn't roll that way.
Yeah, okay.
No.
Thank you.
Anyway, רבי אליעזר בן יעקב אומר, ביב שהוא כאמור 4 אמות ברשות הרבים. רבי אליעזר בן יעקב said that in case that you have a drainage, that it's come with a ditch whose first 4 cubits are arched over the public domain. So in that case, he said you have an issue of שופכים לתוכו מים בשבת, so you can use it on Shabbat because you basically did not intend to do it. It's דבר שאינו מתכוון, you don't intend to do it, it happens. So we allow that to do, but he said, Rashi explained that it's not Isur Doraita, that it's not something that is a violation of Torah law. The Chazon Ish, Orach Chaim Kufay said that it's an issue in a rabbinic decree in some level, because the whole question is how far is the intent and what exactly happened in the process of pouring that water. So anyway, they said, שופכים לתוך המים משורת החכמים אומרים, אפילו גג או חצר מהאמה לא ישפוך על פי אביב. The sages said that even a roof or a courtyard in the 100 cubit area, one may not pour water directly onto the mouth of the drainage ditch. So I explain in my book, ביאורי כלומר ברש"י על הש"ס, I explain this Rashi because Rashi here have a problem. Pi Aviv, it's a place that it's a very small part, short part to let the water in. So it means that it's like you go throughout this te'ala, this ditch, and Rashi doesn't want us to think that that's applied to the entire ditch, but only to the entrance part, to the drainage. So I think that's what I try to say when I explain here the word klomar in Rashi. That's what bother Rashi. What exactly mean when you use the term lo yishpoch al pi aviv? That is the drainage, the ditch of the drainage. But anyway, he said aval shofechu lagag v'amayim yordim labiv. But he may pour it upon the roof, from which the water spill into the drain of its own accord. Now, another halacha, hechatzer ve'achsadra מצטרפים ל400. The courtyard, and what they said in achsadra in your book? Here, David, what they said?
Chatzer and an adjoining portico.
Joint portico, okay. Mm-hmm. So a roof, but unwalled structure in the front of the house. So it's all together 4 cubits, and they permitted to pour water even into the courtyard when you don't have a pit. וכן שתי דיוטאות זו כנגד זו, which means you have 2 stages of houses in the yard, one at the opposite of the other. So they said mikzatan, and part the yard is less than 4 cubits. So some of them, one of those people asu uka, so they make this guma, this pit. Mikzatan lo asu uka, some did. Et she'asu uka mutarim, et she'lo asu uka usurim. And those who did fashion a pit are allowed. The other are prohibited to do it. So later the Gemara explained it. My Tama, what's the reason that the courtyard 4x4 cubit in area does not require a pit? מרבה מפני שהאדם אסור להסתפק שעתיים מים בכל יום. And therefore, because a person ordinarily use the 2 seah of water every day, ב400 אדם רוצה לזלפן. When they use the 4 cubits, by 4 cubits a person wants to sprinkle the water, even if it is a practice, the water does flow out of the courtyard. This effect is not necessarily in his intention. So basically the sages not put a decree of something that it's not, the Ritva said that something that it's not usual, the Rashba too, they said it, sages not put it. It's also important to know that it's just a side note that every person uses a 2 seah of water every day. So if you think about it, it adds up the astonishment of amount of 48 lug. So even if you add the one that he used for his face, or hands and feet, you use all of that, what the person cooks with food with, so it still leaves an astonishing amount of water. So it teaches us the importance of being clean, everything one does. Clearly, the careful wash often It's a famous statement. Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair said, he said cleanliness leads to prishut. And Rav Yaakov Amdin said that even here the Tana he discussed the concept of nekiyut. It's also meant personal hygiene and clear garments. It's a famous statement in Gemara Nedarim 81 that Shmuel said that failure to clean one's body or garment can cause madness. A person who is careful about his soul cleanliness will surely be circumspect regarding his garment and body, which are the tools used to his soul. So it's showing a way a brain, a seichel, for a wise person to keep clean. But that's just a side note. So he said here, pachot me'arba shofchad, ve'i de'avid uka share, ilo asur. So he said, if he made a fashion a pit, it's fine. Otherwise, it's forbidden. Rabbi Zera amar, 400 taimei. Pachot me-400 lo taimei. Rabbi Zera said that the reason is that in the courtyard of a 4 cubit by 4 cubit, the water is likely to be absorbed into the ground. But if it's less, the water will not be absorbed, but will flow out. Mai benayu, what's the difference between them? Amar Abaye, arich vekatin ika benayu. Long and narrow courtyard, that's the real difference between them. So it means that when it's come to chatzer, in a yard that doesn't have the square size of 4 by 4 cubit, it's only narrow, long and narrow, so you can put the water there. Tnan, Chatzer ve'achsadra mitztarfin le-400. We just learned in the Mishnah that the courtyard and portico, they combine for the requisite of 4 cubit. So if there's no pit there. Bishlam al Rab Zera Nicha, because he said it's a narrow area, you can put the water. Ela lerabba kashya. Bishlam al Rab Zera Nicha, ela lerabba kashya. So if you go by Rab Zera, it's fine, because he is dealing with a long, narrow area that you can throw water there. But according to Rabbah, how do you explain it? Tirgem Rabbi Zera aliba de Rabbah. Rabbi Zera explained it according to Rabbah, be'achsadra me'alechet al pnei kol hachatzer kula. That you have a portico that extends along the entire courtyard. So you add it to the weed alone. And tashma, חצר שאין בה 400 על 400, אין שופכים לתוכה מים בשבת. A yard that you don't have 4 by 4 cubits, you don't put the water there on Shabbat, so that it means that it's specifically a square cubit, that it's 4 by 4. בישלמה לרבא ניחא אל רב זרע קשיא, אמר לך רב זרע, המני רבנני. Rabbi Zera said that this, you go by the opinion of the rabbis, the sages, at the end of the Mishnah, that they say that the area of the courtyard, it's not of importance. Umatnitin, so basically they forbid to put the water in that area. Umatnitin Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. So the Mishnah go by Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov that the area is the decisive factor, which means he said that you can go and throw the water over there. So it means even in the yard that is narrow and long, you can put the water. And the first clause of the Mishnah go by Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. So the Gemara asks, "Why do hakei the Rabbi Zera laukim alemadin Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov?" Why Rabbi Zera was forced to go in the Mishnah according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov? Why he's not going by the sages that said that that you can mezalef, you can put some water only by 4 by 4 in a square, which means that it's a go by 1 not by the sages. So he said, Amarava matnitin kshitei. Rava said that the Mishnah was difficult for him. Why? My area the Tani Chatzer שהיא פחותה ליתנה חצר שאין בה 400 על 400. Why is that it's less than 4 cubits, from which we can infer that it is as an area of 4 by 4 cubits is permitted to pour water, even if it's not square in shape. Because we said we can learn Chatzer שהיא פחותה, that the courtyard that is not 4 cubit by 4 cubit, so it means that one that it's not a square shape. So it's basically including the area of 16 cubits. So that's basically the Vilna Gaon here. He explained that even you have this area of 16 square cubits, but basically El Alav Shma Mina. So you shouldn't one conclude from this discussion the Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Shma Mina. Remember we said many times that if you use the word twice in the Talmud, it's always emphasis. So here they want to emphasize that the conclusion of this is go by Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, that it's because the water, it swallowed the water, and you can put the water even in a long narrow courtyard, as long as they have area of 16 square cubits. So the Gemara asks, "V'hamid the Seif Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Reish Alav Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov." So because the second clause of the Mishnah go by Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov in regards to Biva Kamur, in that area that is a tzip, so it means that the first part it's not. So how come Rabbi Zera said that the first clause of the Mishnah go over Eliezer ben Yaakov, since we said specifically that the Seifa, the last clause was going by him? So the Gemara said no, Kula Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yaakovi. The entire Mishnah is Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, and this is a very common language that we use many times. They said V'chasurei mechasra v'hachektane, and it's like part, it's missing. It's like the entire Mishnah is in Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, but for the incomplete. The Mishnah is not complete. And here is the way it should be. Chatzer שהיא פחותה מ-400. If you have a courtyard that it's less than 4 cubits in the area, אין שופכין לתוך המים בשבת. You should not pour water there on Shabbat. 400 שופכין, but if it's a 4 cubit you can put water there. שרבי אליעזר בן יעקב אומר, ביב הכמור 400 ברשות הרבים שופכים לתוכו מים בשבת. רבי אליעזר בן יעקב says, if the first 4 cubits of the drainage ditch were arched over in the public domain, one may pour wastewater into it on Shabbat.
Ask a question. I know you referred to being 16 square amot.
Not me, the Vilna Gaon.
The Vilna Gaon. So, and then here, obviously, in the Talmud it says, in the Gemara it says 4 by 4 amot. Does it? So just 16 square amot? It could be 8 by 2 or 16
that's
by 1.
Good point. That includes the area.
So,
which means that
so they're implying an area, not specifically 4 by 4 amots.
The idea is if you have when it's a not a square shape,
right?
Even if it includes an area of 16 square cubits, that's part of the entire domain. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer biv hakamur. Now we're referring to the Mishnah. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov said that if the first 4 cubits of the drainage ditch were arched over in the public domain, it's permitted to pour wastewater into it on Shabbat. And the sages said no. So Rashi here דקטנה לרבנן אבל שופכו ואין יורדים לביב, כלומר לצינור חקוק פה. So here Rashi used the word klomar, and I explained in my book that according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, that his lenient, the sages are more stricter, that he should not put the water in that entrance of the bead. So the way I understand this Rashi is that that area is close to the exit of the yard. So therefore the roof, it's coming in a way in the almost like a curve, and water coming out to the yard and then go to the drainage. And the big question is why Hananiah disagree with the sages, because the water eventually will swallow in that courtyard. So Rashi wants to say Klomar etzino hakuk po. I understand this Klomar in Rashi that those days they have a flat roofs. Today less and less they use this type of roof, and the charitz was in the roof itself. So the water coming from the roof, they don't have other choice but to go to that drainage area, and because the water is not swallowed in that roof, so it's very similar to what Hananiah said, that it's forbidden to do it al pi aviv. That's, you're welcome to read it in
even
the
similar to the peak roofs we have now with gutters around them. I mean, if you pour it on the roof, it'll run into the gutter and then down into the drainage.
But if you look at this building versus most of the building that have, so you have an issue with the drainage all the time.
Of course, because it's flat. So
it's flat. Okay. So that's what I understand what bothering Rashi. Anyway, מתניתים דלא כחנניה, דתניא, חנניה אומר, אפילו גג 100 אמה לא ישפוך, לפי שאין הגג עשוי לבלוע אלא לקלח. So we said that the Mishnah is not taught according to the opinion of Hananiah, because Hananiah said that a roof that 100 cubits in the area, one may pour water onto it because the roof is not up to absorb the water that will cause to run off. So as you said earlier, so putting water into the roof is equivalent to putting directly outside. It's no difference. Again, that's my understanding here. Tana, במה דברים אומרים בימות החמה ובימות הגשמים שופך ושונה ואינו נמנע. So that applies solely in the summer, because in the summer he wanted to see the water coming out of his yard, and therefore if it's go out to the public domain, it's basically fulfilling his intent. But in the winter, in the rainy season, when this yard is not the clean, so you repeat. He said here, shofech veshoneh, one may pour and repeat, and doesn't need to hold back. Why? מה טעמם? הרב האדם רוצה שיבלו מים מקומם. So he said that the person is want the water to be observed in a spot. It's a lot of water in the courtyard in the raining season, so it's muddy. So he wants he doesn't care whether wastewater remains in the courtyard or it flows out. אמר לאביי והרי שופכים, האדם רוצה שיבלעו לא ישפוך, בקטנה לא ישפוך. It's a good example, the drainage ditch, that the person wants to be absorbed, and the Mishnah tells us that he shouldn't put the water into the ditch. אמר להתם למעייני חושלי, over there, what exactly the reason that we should be concerned? He says, אם משום קלקול חצרו, if it's because they're spoiling his courtyard, המקלקלה וקיימה. So he make this, it's already spoiled by the rainwater. ואם משום גזירה שאומרו צינורו של פלוני מקלח מים, if it's because somebody said that this guy, his gutter is flowing with the water on Shabbat, so that it's watering a garden, that is a violation of Shabbat. So he said, סתם צינורות מקלחים מים הם. The gutter ordinarily flow with water with the rainy seaon, people do not entertain with this suspicion. רב נחמן בימות הגשמים הוקע מחזיק שעתיים נותנים בו שעתיים, מחזיק שעה נותנים בו שעה. So the rainy season a pit holds a 2 seah, he granted permission to put 2 seah of water. בימות החמה מחזיק שעתיים נותנים בו שעתיים, שעתיים נותנים לו כל הקר. In the summertime, a pit has a capability of 2 seah, we grant in 2 seah, but it's if hold 1 seah, would not grant him permission to pour any water at all. It's obvious. ימות החמה נעמי מחזיק שאה native לי שאה. So he said, in a hot season, if the pit holds 1 seah, so we give him 1 seah, and he's pour only this amount of water. So what's the reason we don't do it? So he said, גזירה דילמה אתי ליתן לי שעתיים. He put a decree that he maybe put the שעתיים, the 2. Which means that because this is the amount that people usually use every day, and this uka, this pit holding only 1 seah, and the water coming out to where? Always to a public domain. So that's the reason that they put a decree not allowing to use the water at all, only if they have this pit uka that holds שעתיים. So now if the same thing, so it's a rainy season, we should also apply the same preventive measure. Over there in ימות הגשמים, the Rif said למאי נחושלה. To what type of prohibition we should be concerned? If he put שעתיים in the pit that have only 1 seah, אם משום קלקול, if it's because he is considered spoiling his courtyard, it's already spoiled by the rainwater and it's still there. אם משום גזירה שממרו צינורות של פלוני מקלח מים, סתם צינורות מקלחים, and the same. If the people said this guy, the water, they gather, it's water and it's and Shabbat, it says gather or really gush with water in a rainy season. That's what we said earlier. אמר רבי ילקח אפילו קור ואפילו קוריים. So Abaye said one can even pour a core or 2 core of wastewater into a small pit, as all gutters flow with water in the rainy season, so there's no cause for any concern. And for sure here it's many gilsaot how to hold here the words, the discussions, who is first, who is second. For example, Ritva said that it's in the first assumption we don't need to bother with uka, and you should go ahead. He quote the Rosh that said that you can use that for water. That's the way we understand early in the sugya. Now, likewise, with regard to 2 upper stories, one opposite the other, the same courtyard. So we said that the residents of the one who dug a pit in the courtyard may put water into it, while the resident of the others did not dig a pit, prohibited from doing it. Amarava afilu ervu. Says even the resident of 2 upper stories establish an eruv together. So, in other words, even they do eruvei chatzerot together. So, Amar le Abaye ma'itama. Abaye asked him, what's the reason that you said that not allowed? Says ilam mishum benefisha de maya, if because it's too much water. So it's 2 houses. They're using arba seah one day. So, and this uka, this dig part, contain only שעתיים. The water coming into public domain. So, והתניא אחת לי uka ואחת לי גיסטרה, בריכה וערבה, said that it's regardless if it's a pit, the same, it's applied to a crack, earthquake vessel, that used as a receptacle for water, or a small pond, or a basin, אף על פי שנתמלאו מים ערב שבת, שופכים לתוך המים בשבת. Even you know that this water that you put now, it's going to a public domain, because since the one who put it, he doesn't intend it. So the Magen Avraham or Achaim in Shinun Zayin said, because they said that we should make this dig part to remind people that this Shabbat, you will not forget, you will not put the water to a public domain. But if you explain it, you have to go this way. Amar Rava said, לא שנו אלא שלא ערבו. The case that the residents of two upper stories did not establish an Eruv together. אבל ערבו מותרים. So when they make the Eruv, they allow. So Tosfot here explain that the people that make this pit and to put water to the yard, even they didn't make an Eruv, and you cannot carry from the house to the yard because they don't put really inside the pit in the yard, but they just put the water, and the water coming out of the pit by itself. So you don't put this decree in that yard because it's not direct connection to the fellow. וכי לא ערבו מה טעמה לו. If they don't make the Eruv, what's the reason? You may say that the same ways that the people in a second Yuta, you allow them to put mine to that pit. So why what's the reason that the resident who did not dig a pit may not pour water into the courtyard? אמר רבשי גזירה דן מלאתי לאפוקי ממני לבתים לאטם. So they may take utensils full of water from their houses to that domain, and therefore they put a decree that you cannot. It's like they say just put a boundary. And by the way, the Ritva said that we mentioned that in the Gemara, which means that it's like a decree. People come to take out the fill of water, vessels, utensils full of water from their houses into the courtyard, and then put it in a pit. So if you don't have an Eruv, it's prohibited to use it. So again, Bnei Yuta that make this pit close to them, you should not worry that they take these vessels to the yard. The Tosfot explained because the uka, the pit, it's closed, so therefore you can put the water there. Hadran alach ketzad mishtatfin. We, Mitzvah Hashem, going and revisit this chapter 8 of Tractate Yomim. Shulchan Aruch Or HaChaim 355. שעשו מחיצה בשותפות. If the residents of two balconies erect a petition together in one of the balconies in order to permit the drawing of water, they are nonetheless both prohibited from doing so unless they establish an Eruv. Now, if in the case that of a courtyard less than 4 by 4 cubits, it's permitted to pour wastewater into it on Shabbat only if a pit with capacity of 2 seah were dug in the courtyard to receive the water, or if this pit were dug outside the courtyard, are covered with a board. We said we discussed a drainage ditch. If 4 cubits of a ditch are arched over a public domain, it's permitted to pour wastewater into the drainage ditch in the courtyard on Shabbat, even if the water will flow outside. That's the Shulchan Aruch HaChaim 357. If a courtyard is a long and narrow, which means that's the Vilna Gaon we said, and they say it's 16 square cubits in the area, but not 4 by 4 cubits. It's permitted to pour into it as much as water as one wishes. And we said that also we divided between rainy season in the winter time. It's permitted to pour as much water as one wishes into his courtyard in a rainy season, even a core or two, which is 30 and 60 times more than a se'ah. This leniency applies even if the courtyard is not 4 by 4 cubits, and we said that that's Shulchan Aruch Or HaChaim 357. The last halacha of today, it's Ervu velo Ervu. Residents of two houses who live opposite one another and whose houses face a single courtyard less than 4 cubits by 4 cubits in area, if they did not establish an Eruv and only one of the houses dug a pit, the member of that household are permitted to pour into it, while the inhabitants of the other are prohibited from doing so. If they did establish an Eruv, they are all permitted to use the pit. That's Shulchan Aruch Or HaChaim 377.
Hashem.